Hello and welcome to this tutorial on how to sew the Yoalli dress plus extensions. You can find the link to the pattern in the description of this video. I'm now cutting out the skirt extension pattern pieces. And these are the Yoalli dress pattern pieces for the bodice. I shortened the sleeve extension by 30 centimeters. After cutting, I'm marking my pattern pieces to know which one's which, and I'm also marking all notches. Then I'm cutting out the lining for the bodice. These are all pattern pieces, and I'm now going to sew together the bodice main fabric pieces. I'm using my overlock, but you can also use a regular sewing machine and finish the seam with a zigzag stitch. This is the main bodice and the lining, and I'm now going to top stitch the seams. I'm top stitching with a straight stitch about 5 mm apart from the seam. It is recommendable that you iron your pieces before top stitching them, which makes it a lot easier. I also recommend top stitching to the opposite side of the lining, so when joining the seams you will have less bulk. I'm finishing the open edges of the sleeves on two sides. This is what the sleeves should look like afterwards. The next step is to fold in and iron the seam allowance, and then we fold in and iron again. This will be the tunnel for the elastic. Close the tunnel with a regular straight stitch on the long side. After doing this for both sides, you're going to fold it in half and sew it together on the bottom seam. Now I'm folding over 2 centimeters for the sleeve cuff, and I'm closing it except for a tiny gap where I want to insert the elastic. I'm inserting my elastic with a safety pin. I don't have a battle tool. If you have one, please feel free to use it. And afterwards we're going to secure the elastic with a few stitches. After securing the elastics, we can finally attach the sleeves to the bodice. I like to attach them first to the main bodice, right sides facing each other. Stay stitching the sleeves right now. Make sure to align the bottom seam with the side seam. Then you can attach the lining, right sides facing the right side of the bodice, pinning it all around. Use the regular 1 cm seam allowance, and it's gonna be much easier after already stay stitching the sleeves. Now when it comes to the center, it's important that you clip the seam allowance. It will make it much neater from the other side. You can also use these zigzag scissors to clip the seam allowance, especially for curves. It's very useful. Now I'm understitching the seam allowance to the lining. This will prevent the lining from being seen from the right side. Now the bodice is ready for being attached to the skirt. I made the skirt extension, for which you can also find a YouTube tutorial on my channel, and I'm simply aligning all seams. I forgot to finish the edges of the back seam, which I'm doing now. Then you can sew together the skirt and the bodice, right sides facing each other, only the main fabric. I'm also finishing the bottom edge of the bodice lining to make things easier for me later. Now we're sewing the zipper. Mark the end of your zipper and sew together the skirt underneath the marking. Switch to your zipper foot and sew one side of the open zipper, right sides facing each other. Sew the other side with a closed zipper so you can make sure that everything is aligned. And it already looks pretty nice. Now we just have to fold over the lining and hand sew it to the back of the zipper. Before that, I'm folding over and ironing the seam allowance of the bottom of the bodice lining because we're also going to hand sew that. Fold and pin the seam allowance of the lining inwards like this, all around the waist seam of the bodice. Now you can also insert your hook and eye on each side and sew it in between the lining and the main fabric. I'm using a slip stitch to secure the lining in place and make it look very neat from the inside too. After securing your lining, your zipper will look very neat from the inside and outside, and your hook and eye is also in place. Next up, we'll be inserting our elastic into the cuff of the sleeve, using the gap we left earlier. After determining the right size, I'm sewing together both ends. Then you can close the gap we left open for inserting the elastic. The last step is to finish the hem of the skirt. I'm using my overlock, you can use your zigzag stitch. And then just fold over the seam allowance of 1 centimeter and top stitch the seam allowance down. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you want to get more inspiration on Yoalli dress versions, feel free to check out my Instagram at Telabeja. See you in the next tutorial, bye!